At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES Podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is the Super NES Podcast, episode number 218. You're getting up this high, numbers are getting confusing, so my bad. I'm Greg, he is Joe.
Hello.
And we are covering another kind of sort of movie adaptation here. We'll get into it here in the woods, but we're looking at a game. I'm pretty sure I picked this game at this point. Like I said before, we determined our list months ago, and I think I picked this game because the reputation that it has, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of look into. So we're covering The Wizard of Oz this episode, which is a platformer. Obviously based upon the movie, but also taking inspiration from other places as well too, which is one of many things which makes this game interesting. So, Joe and I would definitely get into it as whether or not we thought it was a good game or not. But one of the things that caught my eye about this game is the fact that this is one of the first games that really let you play as a female character the whole way through if you want to, which is pretty rare of a time period. And B, it's also one of the games a lot of games will start off as being underrated, or not really appreciated or cult classics like Earthbound, for example. They don't do very well at start, but then over time they build up a reputation for themselves. Mm-hmm. Games do occasionally go the other way, where they're thought of as being good games at the start, like the modern gamers are like, what is this crap? So, but most of the reasons for that are because of things outside the gamer's control, i.e., graphics have really changed since then, game systems really evolved. Right. This is a long-winded explanation of saying this game also falls into that it was thought better over the time than it is now category. So, and I don't think some of those reasons are valid. So, this would be kind of an interesting, and nothing else, this would be interesting to talk about. So, because platformers themselves can be kind of boring. Although I think to give credit to this game, I do think this game does a couple of different things with platforming aspects at least. So, the background. This game was originally announced by the publisher SEGA USA in the early 90s. They originally had planned both the NES and Super NES version of the game. The NES version eventually got scrapped. I could not find how far in development that version got. It may only have got to the playing stages. Because prototypes about old 8-bit, 16-bit games are still being found occasionally nowadays, but usually we know most of the heavy hitters by now if at least some work was done on them. So I'm thinking the NES version of the game never actually got started. But anyway, SEGA was a publisher, mostly Japanese, though they did have a US branch that was around from 1985 to 2009. They were more known in Japan than North America. Their North American games were really not really all that big. They did make the underrated Adventures of Tom Sawyer for the NES, which I thought was actually a pretty good game. So, Eight Eyes was also one of their games, which is kind of a cult classic these days. Speaking about the cult classic. Mm-hmm. They also developed and never released the infamous game Bioforce 8. Have you heard about the game, Joe?
I have not.
Okay, check the story after that game someday. The play's pretty interesting. Okay. So, they also made a game. They also made a wrestling game based upon the UWC League, which never came out either. So, So on Super NES they also on Super NES they also released like some they also released like racing games. They also released like Fushu, the Vampire Dracula game, which George and I covered like a couple years back. So not the best games over here, like over here in North America. They're probably best known for Tetris 64 of the N64, which is actually a very good Tetris game. So, their last video game was Legend of Golfer for the GameCube in 2004. So, and the company of Flight the company shut down. The company they shut down several years after that. Anyway, Sega had a habit about picking up older, cheaper properties to license to make games out of. See Tom Sawyer. So I'm not surprised they picked up like Wizard of Oz either, because the property this time it was probably pretty cheap. So. The actual development of the game, however, was done by a very experienced development company called Manley & Associates, who was around from 1982 until 2002. So they did a lot of games, a lot of ports, and a lot of development games for a lot of big companies during their time period, like the EA, Activision, Disney, Game Tech, Spectrum Holobyte, etc. So. In fact, because of all the work they did with EA, EA bought the company in 1996, turned them into EA Seattle, and then closed it. Eventually closed the studio in 2002, as EA wanted to do bought companies after no longer making profits for them anymore. So that's a whole different story. So they're. Manly never got much credit back in the day, but they have made some very good games over the years. They made Super Conflict, which is one of my favorite Super NES games, which is like a follow-up of Conflict, like the NES. They made a couple other Super NES games, Pink Goes to Hollywood and King Arthur: The Knights of Justice, which you'll be from the cartoon. So we'll probably get to those games at some point. Then eventually at some point. So and also like a puzzle game system like called Wild Snake. So anyway. Generally, kind of underrated. Their track record though is like pretty good usually. So that's all to go to say. This is the game that this game is developed by a company that was experienced, and they had Super NES programming experience. So this wasn't like a totally fly by night, like brand new startup operation, like whatever. So. The game came out in North America in September 1993. Also, eventually got released in Europe as well, like April 1994. So, like I said before, the game got pretty good reviews when it came out at the time period. But since then, like more modern reviews of contemporary and retrospective reviews of this game nowadays, though, are much more harsh. So, anyway. I say this game was developed with the movie in mind. I'm sure, just to go back real quick, I'm sure everybody out here listening to this podcast has seen the classic 1939 movie. So most folks probably know also the movie. The movie itself is actually based upon a book. That originally came out in the 1900s. But how many people knew, however, like Joe, did you know, for example, that the author, Frank Baum, that the author of the book,
Frank Baum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you know? So did you know he actually wrote a whole series of books based upon Oz?
Yeah, actually, this is one of the first series of books that I actually fell in love with.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There were. Yeah. Because pretty much all the other books. Because all the other books in this series were popular back then, but they've all pretty much been forgotten about today, except like the original book. So
because it's the only one that's got a movie.
Yeah. partly, I think, also so, but so the game obviously takes inspiration and ideas from the movie. However, it also takes a lot of inspiration and ideas from a short-lived cartoon series, 1990 as well too. So. You'll be forgiven if you're going right now. There's a cartoon based on this. There actually were two Wizard of Oz cartoons. Believe it or not. So the older one was Japan only from 1986. But I guess, inspired by that success, they did make a short-lived North American-based 1990 cartoon based upon the Wizard of Oz. It only ran for 13 episodes, so not really like a huge success. But the cartoon's kind of, like I said, is a sequel to like the events of the movie, with Dorothy like returning to Oz, and they had like additional adventures there as well. So it's interesting. I don't think the company got the rights to use anything straight from the cartoon, but there definitely is inspiration ideas taken from the cartoon as well, also. So it's a very weird mesh. Hodgepodge of stuff with the stuff they like drew inspiration from, but so so you probably never heard of the cartoon either, I'm sure, Joe, right?
No, the cartoon is definitely new to me. So what I kind of correlated with this is 1993, when this game came out, the Laserdisc was being released, and usually whenever Wizard of Oz has some sort of release, whether that be the original VHS, re-released in theaters, here with the Laserdisc, with the DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, they usually have some sort of like media tied in with it. And, the cartoon makes sense. I could definitely see how, there probably was a cartoon, and you said 13 episodes. And how they integrated that into the game, that actually explains probably quite a bit, especially for like level design and enemies that you encounter. But yeah, I did not know that there was a cartoon, and I'm kind of excited to actually go find that.
Well, because it wasn't very popular, there is a DVD, but not all the episodes are included on the DVD. So, because you probably can't find the whole show if you dig around online. So, right. But and of course, because he was involved in everything, Frank Welker also did some voices like the cartoon as well too. So, but because of course he did, because he was involved with everything. Right, so. Right. But anyway, so I'll get more into this later on as to what parts of the game seem like it was taken directly from the movie versus the cartoon. But now that you have that background, and how to maybe fill in a couple. How to fill in a couple gaps in your memory, Joe, as to this game. Can you talk? Can you listen to the gameplay, the gameplay of the game, and how the game actually plays?
So I actually kind of like the idea of the mechanics that they have in this game. So when I started playing this, you start up as Dorothy. Also, like, before we get into that, can we talk about that intro screen? Like,
it's both good and bad at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, cool, like, it's starting to, like, emulate, like, what it was in the movie. That's awesome.
Yes, yep.
And then this 2D JPEG of Dorothy just goes, like, woo, and, like, a little twister, and, like, it just, oh my god, like, it's just bad. Like, that part there was just bad. But, yeah, and then it sings to you, somewhere over the rainbow with, again, like, you have a decent picture there of Dorothy and Toto. But it also looks like Toto's, like, superimposed on top of her instead of, like, laying on top of her sort of thing. So it's like, it really is that whole, like, it's good but bad at the same time.
Yeah.
But that being said, you take the role of Dorothy. Surprise, surprise. You have 3 things at your disposal. You have your kick, which is okay. You'll probably use that more than anything else. You have a wand that shoots projectiles, but ammo is very scarce and your use is going to vary. And then you also have a jump, which if you get the ruby slippers with the wings, it lets you kind of glide a little bit, which you do need in this game. So playing as Dorothy in adventuring through the levels is your typical platform affair, kicking and using your projectiles to take out a load of different enemies. And then, you meet the Scarecrow first, then he becomes part of your party. Then same thing with Tin Man and Cowardly Lion down the road. And each character plays different, and I thought this was a really cool aspect of the game. Like, I kind of got like they were going for like a Lost Vikings vibe, but they didn't commit totally to it, or because of the size of the sprites, they decided not to commit to it. Because if I remember correctly, in Lost Vikings, you can control all 3 guys at one time on the screen.
Yes. Yeah.
So, here you can switch between characters, but you can't have them on screen at the same time. But like with Lost Vikings, as I mentioned, they all have different abilities. One thing that was infuriating about this, is when you change characters, it changes the control scheme as well, which really bothered me. So generally, A and B is how you're going to jump with Dorothy, X is kick, Y is your projectile. And I'm just going to make this one remark, and then that's all I'm going to talk about with that. But when you get the Scarecrow attacks with A, which was not what I was expecting. So,
yes.
Granted, I did kill the enemy, but I meant to jump over the enemy instead of beating him with my pitchfork. So there is that. Yeah, I mean, that's the general gist of it. While you're going through the levels, you're collecting bricks for the Yellow Brick Road. Why you are rebuilding the Yellow Brick Road, I do not know, because...
So, right. Yes, let me just explain that real quick. It has to do with the overall plot. You'd be forgiven for knowing though because the game doesn't really explain that like anywhere. So, you're trying to get 6 tickets like from each country, like in Oz,
right?
To be able to open the Emerald City's gates, to get in there, like finish the game. So you have to, and one thing you're doing, and so another thing you're doing, like, and one thing you're doing, like each level, is also trying to collect like bricks, and it's just basically gatekeeping, because the game will let you proceed to the next level, trying to get enough bricks to actually like you fill in the gaps and repair the road. So it just simply, there's a game reason for it, but it's also just more like the real reason for it is just like, it's more like, like gatekeeping to make you play and have to get that bricks to be able to proceed.
Yeah, so. And this and the tickets were like 2 of the biggest things that really annoyed me in the game. So you don't have to collect all the bricks, so that's a plus.
True. Yep.
So that's a huge plus. We are going to talk about how that is bad, though, when we talk about controls and whatnot. You also have to collect the tickets from the different countries, as Greg said, and you have to have all the tickets to even access the last level. So there's that. What's even worse is you get access to the last level. More than likely, you're going to make it all the way to the top, and I hate that stuff where you just have to keep jumping to get to the top. Which, again, when we get to control, you'll understand completely why. But before you can beat the game and you get to the top of the tower, there is a point where you have to essentially make a jump either left or right onto a platform. If you never grabbed the ruby slippers with the wings, you will not make those jumps. I found that out on 2 different occasions because I died the first time when I jumped to the left, and then I died a second time when I jumped to the right. And then I went online and looked, and I was like, I have to go back to another level. I have to get the ruby slippers with the wings just to make that floaty jump. That was very infuriating. But thankfully also, the cool thing about this game is you do get a password system. Now, They don't give you passwords all willy-nilly, though. So you get a password when you complete a level, and you get a password when you beat a boss or meet a companion. So they're kind of few and far between, but also they do the job, and I probably wouldn't have beaten this game without it, or save states, but we'll get into that.
The password system's also it's pretty good for this game. Also, they're not like super long, complicated passwords either. So
correct. So I put it's as long as a Metroid password, but without all the numbers and different characters that could be in
thank
there.
God for that.
Right,
yes.
exactly. So yeah, that's all I'll say about the general game right now.
But okay, I think you hit the pretty. So I think you hit the. I think that's a pretty good summary of things. So there are, I mentioned before the start of the podcast, there are some things this game tries doing differently to make it stand out from the platformers. The fact you are playing as Dorothy, for example, is a big one, of course. But there are some adventure and puzzle aspects like this game plays well too. I mean, it's not it's not like straight platforming. We'll just have to mix the gameplay up a little bit. So like I already mentioned, you're trying to collect bricks, you're trying to collect the tickets. There's total like 31 levels altogether in this game. So that actually makes it like pretty beefy game as far as length goes. The typical online playthrough of this game is like an hour and a half to 2 hours long. Yeah. So it is a bit longer than usual. Platformer because of those reasons. So there's also warp zones you can find. They can special items that help you out, and you also are able to access puzzle stages every now and then by collecting total snack bones, like at the level. So there's like 4 different types of mini games you can play. All as total. They're all very weird games, but having said that, I did find all the games fun. So, I mean, like I said, I appreciate the variety and the variety that the developers at least try to put into the game. As far as that goes.
So, what were the other 2? Because I found the one where like you're Toto and you can you have to find the hidden words or hidden message. But I didn't see any of the other secret levels like that. So
okay, no problem. So my notes here say there's 4. There's scramble concentration, which is basically concentration. You have to match 3 icons. Total versus, you have to get total to the end while dodging enemies.
Okay.
Follow the path, which is a very confusing tile game. We have to you're forced to move in certain directions based upon the tile paths. Try to get into the end. And the last one's lemon drop elimination. We roll 2 dice. And you have to choose a number tile. A number tile. That's the sum of your that's your move.
Yeah.
So you have to use that to get total spelled no, I'm sorry. There's actually 5 mini games. The last one's a word game. The word game that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's the
total that has enter phrase. Yeah. So there's like 5 mini games here. Like a total. So you also Jewel icons can also be found during the gameplay to give you the ability to shoot, the limited ammo that Joe was talking about. And I do appreciate this. You are able to change characters on the fly by any time you want to by pushing the select button. So. Certain games you can't do that until late in the stage or whatnot. Yeah. So I do appreciate the fact that this game allows you to change characters at any point.
Just don't let any of those companions die, or the picture at the end will be very sad.
Well, let's talk about the companions then a little bit here. I think because because you have the Scarecrow has a pitchfork. And also scare away crow enemies, of course. The Tin Man has a low kick, and he also has a high axe chop. And the Cowardly Lion attacks with his claws. Mm-hmm. Now, I appreciate the fact that the developers at least made the characters somewhat faithful to how the characters are shown, like in the movie, like the cartoon. So that's cool. But honestly, you can play as Dorothy 90% of the game. It's because I think that Dorothy's the most balanced, well-rounded character. They didn't do a good job of gameplay balance in this game. I think because not only was the overall game I thought pretty easy, minus a few minus a few spots of artificial frustration that Joe just talked about earlier. But you really only need to break out a different character for certain times of the game when you specifically need their abilities, because otherwise Dorothy's your most balanced, well-rounded character, and you really can play through and you really can play as her for the whole game. It's like again, other games have this problem too, but it's like, again, what's the point of having different characters if the game never incentivizes you to change? Yeah,
for sure.
So, did you have the same kind of feeling as far as that went, Joe?
Oh yeah, I used Dorothy through most of the things. So my first playthrough, I got all the way up to the Tin Man without passwords or anything else. Very frustratingly so. But they all died except for Dorothy. So I was kind of forced to use Dorothy for a bit. But yeah, I found using Dorothy was so much easier. And then, on my second playthrough, when I decided I need to complete the story with everybody, I decided to literally just use Dorothy, until there were cases that I couldn't. And spoiler, if you get to the end and fight the Wicked Witch, best thing to do is jump up near her after she disappears, as Dorothy, and then turn into the Tin Man. Tin Man can't be set on fire. He's not damaged by any of the projectiles that the witch will throw at you, and you can literally just hack at her with the axe and you'll win. Right. I totally cheated my way to beat the game, but you know what? I thought about it, and it was one of those where I accidentally switched to the Tin Man, and I got hit with one of those fireballs, and I go, oh, I didn't get hurt. And then I totally forgot that Tin Man can't jump. So I was sitting at the edge trying to jump up there, and I'm like, why can't I do this? And then light bulb went off. Oh, okay. So, and when the witch was done attacking and doing her thing, I turned into Dorothy, jumped over, and then turned back to the Tin Man and just went to town and had a blast.
Right. Well, you also should mention here real quickly, Flanders being complete and also being fair. There are special abilities that each character can do as well. Joe already mentioned the flying slippers that Dorothy can have. Yeah. The Scarecrow can trudge through mud and stand on thin branches. Mm-hmm. Again, that's critical for a couple places to to advance. The Lion can climb, obviously. And the Tin Man can walk safely in swamp liquids because of his a strong, tough body. And there are specific icons that you only see for specific characters as far as life, as far as extra lives and health points go. It's if you're playing as Dorothy, the show up as Glinda's bubbles and a blue bow. Yeah. The Scarecrow, you'll see them as like the haystack and graduation cap. The Tin Men, you see them as oil cans and hearts. And the Cowardly Lion, you see them as as tofus. That's a curious choice.
Right.
And medals. So it's like I appreciate. Yes, again, I appreciate the developers taking the time to program this into the game because they didn't have to.
Right.
And again, it is pretty spot on with the source material. But it's also like again because the game incentivizes you to play as Dorothy most of the game. You won't see all that. So there are things this game does that are different and are unique. But most players probably won't see it, like probably won't experience them because those drawbacks, unfortunately. So, but anyway, so. One of the biggest gripes that modern gamers have with the game, and it just certainly is a gripe. So like we might as well talk about here like for a bit. Collision detection.
Yes.
They're not good.
Yes. So I literally have an entire paragraph here in my notes about that.
Go right ahead.
So overall, honestly, the controls are good in this game. Like, there is a really good game.
They're pretty
here.
tight. Yep.
There's a very good game. The problem is the hit detection is horrible. And I do mean horrible. The other thing that really bothers me is platforms. This is a platforming game. Platforms are important. There are some platforms that you can jump on. There are some platforms that look like they should be jumped on. And there are other platforms that you are just going to fall through. Because hit detection. So this is exactly what I was talking about when I was like, we'll talk about this later. This right here is the detriment to this game. I can get over, in my opinion, the mediocre graphics. I don't think they're anything fantastic for this time period. Like I said, the intro was kind of cool to see at first until I saw that weird Dorothy warping thing. But, this is a game based on a movie from 1939, so they really didn't need to do all that much. Anyways, it's the controls. The controls is what kills this game. And, I've seen people on YouTube, and they've complained, and they've said how bad this game is, and I think it's judged unfairly most times that I saw opinions on this.
I agree with you.
They knocked the graphics, they knocked the character system and things of that nature. I think I only saw one YouTuber, and I can't even think of his name right now, that actually, saw the game in a positive light, but literally had the same issue I did, and it sounds like you did, Greg, which is the hit detection, and platforming with that bad hit detection. This game could be literally, and spoiler, but this could be at least a B tier game. There's enough here that this could actually be a very good game where I'd be like, you know what, this is worth $15-20 used if you can find it. But even the music, we haven't gotten there yet, but the music is fantastic. The sound effects are great. Yeah, it loops. Yes, it can get annoying, but it only gets annoying because of this issue right here. The hit detection, because you're going to be playing levels over and over and over and over again. And the first lesson I got with this, and you may have had the same issue, was not in so much the first level or even the second level. It was leading up to me getting the Scarecrow, and you have to jump through a cornfield. And you're jumping on the different, kind of petals of, the corn, the stalk part. And, it's, oh my God. I don't know how many times I fell through platforms there and just, spot on, in the middle of the platform. Any other game, I would have made contact, I would have been able to continue along, and I would have been like, this is a fantastic game. But instead, I would literally fall through, and my frustration just through the roof.
So I definitely agree with you on most of that. I was able to power through the game despite the collision detection problems, and I think And I think that's kind of like both like damning and also telling at the same time. And the fact that you can enjoy this game and have some fun with it if you can get through the collision detection issues.
Yes.
Because it's like once you learn where the ticket pieces are in a stage, you can go right there. That minimizes the time that you're spent for struggling like that issue. The game overall is not that hard. Thank God, because the game was difficult. On top of this, it'd be unplayable. Because instead what you have is the collision detection issues are something you just have to mentally account for that artificially raise the challenge level up higher than it should be. So, and it's like. So most of your frustration and most of your challenge with this game comes of trying to make the jumps and trying also. And trying to just simply have enough health to get through certain areas of the game because you know you're going to take hits. So, and again, it's a shame because like I mentioned, the controls are tight. It's just like, I don't know what happened here with the programming on this game because before, these developers were not slouches. They knew what they were doing. Yeah. So, I'm not really sure what the issue is here with this, but it's like maybe it was just simply time constraints because because again. We'll get to it later on at the end here, but it's like with these licensed games, I'm sure there was a very tight time limit, and the publisher was probably saying we need this game now, and maybe the developers just didn't have enough time to tighten things up. Unfortunately,
and that ties it all back to your intro and talking about like the history of this particular company. Like, I'm listening to you mention these games and like talk about how good they are and like what their track record is. And then I'm sitting there in the back of my mind while you're going through all this, and I'm just going like, this game is not any of that.
True, which is strange.
Right.
Because I said, I'm not sure what happened.
So I agree with you. I believe that this was a rushed project, and given a little bit more time, I think this could have been fantastic.
Anyway, so the graphics. The graphics in this game, the graphics in this game, I think are like a mixed bag because it's like you have the weird issues that Joe already talked about. It's like the overall stages themselves, they're both good and bad in my mind. The game's very bright and colorful. It has that going for it. It definitely evokes the look and feel of the movie, like the movie and the cartoons. They did take some liberty with adding additional stages and whatnot. Of course they did, because of course, because you go licensed material, like don't get you like so far. But the resolution though for the backgrounds though is not great. It almost is like parts of the game almost like 8-bit in some areas, I think, for sure. So it's like the characters themselves are pretty large and detailed, but again. But they lack focus. It's like Dorothy's the only one I think. Dorothy's the only one I think, like who's animated well, looks good as a result. The other three characters are more like, they're fine. They're fine. They could look better. That kind of like thing. So, it's like, the opening. The opening and ending sequences are definitely you're definitely weird as far as as far as that goes. But it's like, I don't know. It's like it's both. That's why I said the graphics in this game. I think are both good and bad at the same time. Like that makes sense.
Yeah.
Music also I think is a mixed bag. It's like I love the fact that they used a lot of like. They incorporated a lot of like familiar tunes like in the movie. You definitely hear a lot of like familiar music is playing in this game. So, and there also is so that's mixed in also like some original music which sounds very Oz-ish, to blend in with that. Maybe some, I highly doubt any of it's from the cartoon, because as I said before, I'm sure they didn't license it, but they may have been inspired by something like the cartoon. So, So I love the fact they have music in here. Overall though, I thought the music was kind of like kind of like not composed extremely well. It's like there were some very gratingly harsh instrument samples like in this game, I thought, which like I know Super NES has problems doing certain instruments very well, but I know the system could do better than this. Yeah. So again, I wonder if it was like a rush job where they didn't have time to really like fine tune the music as good as it is. The music sound effects overall in this game are good. I love the fact that I said before there are recognizable songs in here, but it's like the music quality could be better. And for some reason, it's not. I'm not really. The only reason I can think about why is why they're like inexperienced developer and/or rushed development time.
Yeah, agreed.
So, one big complaint people had there's one thing that people like both loved and hated about this game was Dorothy herself. So I guess we'll talk about this like a little bit. It's like I said before, this is one of the earliest console games we actually get which actually features like a female character as the lead character the whole way through. So for 1993, cool, pretty good, cool because back then when it plays a woman the whole way through a game, your options before this like pretty much like Barbie games, and that was about it. Yeah. And Dorothy does kind of look and act like like I would imagine her doing so in the movie. It's because in the movie, of course, she doesn't fight. There's only there's only like one hostile action she really does in the course of the movie. Yeah. But it's like kicking makes sense. It's like okay, that's fine. The magical wand, that makes sense too. That should be given that. So, but a lot of other people, especially, but a lot of contemporary critics, and again, we'll talk about this here toward the end. But again, one area I think I don't agree with them at all is the fact that they complain about how Dorothy's how they added on abilities and attacks that Dorothy never had, and I'm like. Hello, creative freedom. Of course, they got to give her something. It's a platformer game. It's like, what's your problem with this? So it's like yeah, you're deviating. It's like you're deviating from the source material, that of course. But it's like it makes sense. It doesn't go beyond it doesn't stretch credibility to the breaking point. I didn't think. It's like it makes sense she'd do these things if she had to, and or if she was given them in the first place. Right. So it's like I don't think I really don't think, and this applies to other characters too. Also, by the way, Dorothy, however, is the one who gets most obviously who gets most attention. I think her attacks are, I think her attacks abilities work fine with this game. They fit in, and they canonically. Maybe they're not canonically, but they make sense for the overall theme and timing, the timing of both the movie and the cartoon. That serve the source material like this game.
Yeah, I mean, while you were talking, I went and I browsed through the 13 episodes of the cartoon, so this way I could see if she ever had a wand that she used as like a weapon. Because I'm thinking at least if it's in the cartoon, we can sit there and be like, okay, well, it was in the cartoon because they have the liberty to use whatever license, and whatnot. But, she never once uses any sort of wand. But what the cartoon does have? A lot of platforming. Yep. I did notice that when I was fast forwarding through episodes. So, overall, I think, I agree with you. The music's not great on a lot of levels, but also it's not horrible either.
No.
It's very I think that pretty much sums up this game in general. This game is meh. I could take it or leave it. It doesn't matter either way. And unfortunately, in the sea of Super Nintendo games, not just what we've covered, but the library as a whole, I can see how this would just go under the radar and nobody would even know this thing existed.
Yeah, it wasn't really like a big success commercially. Commercially, it looks like based upon my eBay results. But having said that, I agree with you. This game overall is meh. I don't think it's as bad as people love to make it out to be these days.
No, definitely not.
Not by a long shot. I don't know why this game became a whipping boy, bad games, but it doesn't deserve it. There are much worse games in the system than this, for sure, that people could pick on. But I could basically see a few groups of people, a few people who I could recommend this game to, even with the warnings we've already made abundantly clear by recording this. I think overall this is a game the little kids can throw some fun with, because they won't mind the collision detection problems as much like you or I would.
Right.
And the game is very cute and whimsical as far as graphics and theme and whatnot. So. And it's not overly hard. Like I said, like we said before, it's the collision, it's the platforming and collision detection that adds most of the complexity to this game. And again, kids because of the little kid patience won't mind as much.
Yeah.
So I could still recommend. I think it's one limited group of people who might enjoy this. 2, obviously fans of the movie, by all means check this out, because I think because I think overall the game does a pretty good job incorporating the look and feel of the movie here very, very well. Girl games. If you want to play an early girl game, this is here you go. So like good and bad like mixed into it. So. So if you enjoy, so like I said before, if you fit in one of those categories, by all means check this game out. I don't think this game is as terrible as modern reviewers you like to make it out to be. But otherwise, yeah, I agree with you. It's a very meh game, unfortunately. Just like an average platformer that, even though it tries, doesn't really have anything like amazing to make it stand out. Like you said, if the collision detection and platforming had been fixed, and the game's tightened up a little bit, this probably would be a little bit of a better recommended platformer game. But even still, the system was so saturated with platformers. It's like one last closing thought. Something else also in this game I found a bit annoying, but at least you get used to. The jumps are very floaty in this game, like hard to control as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you just get used to. Like, I was going to bring that up, but I felt it was so minor, because by the time you get done with like the first couple levels, you should be used to how floaty that jump is, and that just falls into the other control issues that we already talked about. So that's why I didn't bring that up.
Right. So, okay. Before we move on to closing part of the podcast, Joe, is there anything else you want to say about the game, or would you pretty much already say everything you wanted to?
No, I pretty much said my piece. I mean, for the most part, I used the Lost Vikings analogy, but I thought about it like while I was speaking and then listening to you. This is more in tune with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the Nintendo, the first game, where you have all 4 turtles and you can swap between them to be able to get where you need to. And you know what? And it works really well. If you can, use the Scarecrow for a little bit of time and then swap back to Dorothy, and do the same for Tin Man and Lion, you can get through the game, like we said, 90% with Dorothy. And then, like I said, just beat up the witch with the Tin Man. You can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
That's a sound strategy. And then, you're good to go. But yeah, I can't recommend this game as far as playing on real hardware. I don't know what the eBay prices are. We'll get to that. I don't know the rarity of the game, but I can tell you that playing this through emulation was just fine. I had no hiccups, and it might morally cost you something, but it doesn't cost anything. So therefore, if you end up not liking it and it ends up being horrible, I don't want to hear you complaining to us that we made you buy a bad game because we didn't. We told you to emulate it.
Certainly is. Yeah. I mean, it certainly is. It certainly is one of the most interesting properties to license to make a game out of. There may be a few other weirder ones that I can't think of right now off the top of my head.
I mean, we should have gotten a Casablanca video game and a Gone with the Wind. Why just the Wizard of Oz? That's all I'm saying.
I believe Gone with the Wind was turned into a text adventure game for the computer at some point.
That's not good. Anyways,
well, 80s.
Yeah.
But actually, yeah. That's a good segue to something else I was going to say before. It's this game, I think, really illustrates the point of a big reason why we don't see any movie licensed games anymore these days, because it's there are problems with them. Even with a few exceptions, like Spider-Man, the recent Spider-Man games are very good. But again, it's those are more based upon the properties and not so much a movie itself. Mm-hmm. It's Spider-Man 2 for the GameCube / Xbox, whatever, way back when, was the last really great movie adaptation game I can remember that came out. It's nowadays companies don't want to take chances,
right.
the chance of doing them anymore. And I think this game's a good poster child example. Rightly or wrongly, you can argue either way as to why we don't see that anymore these days. Yeah. Because there are problems with trying to adapt movies or books for that matter to games. It worked better in the old days when hardware was more limited compared to nowadays when games are massive and huge and sprawling, and we don't have enough source material here to make it work.
Right, exactly.
Pretty much. So, but so I think again, you're seeing this time period. A lot of games based upon licensed properties that would either not be tried at all these days, or just simply be loosely based upon the overall franchise, not so much a movie or a movie or book itself anymore. Because it's again with Lord of the Rings, with Spider-Man. The recent good games are based upon based overall on the properties, and not so much a specific comic or movie or book what have you. So, but again, this game's a great poster child for making that point. I wanted to say it. So. I do miss movie tie-in games a little bit, I think, but but then again, I also realize a lot of it's for nostalgia too. So it's maybe I'm not the most objective person to be asking. But
yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I kind of agree. Because you know what, sometimes you just need a lazy movie tie-in, beat 'em up, that'd be fantastic. But yeah, I'm kind of glad that we don't get them anymore. In all honesty. No, yeah.
But anyway, so reviews, as we've already said, this game got pretty good reviews overall back when it came out. GamePro gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Nintendo Power gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Video games and Entertainment gave it 7 out of 10. There were a few bad scores. Super Pro gave it 49 out of 100. All Game gave it 1.5 out of 5 stars. But so again, very mixed reviews, but generally lean toward more positive. And again, I think that goes back to that same point that Joe and I were just talking about, licensed properties. People's expectations for games were different back then, back then compared to now, because it's people didn't mind the fact that it was a licensed property, and even though they had issue with it, they still praised the things about the game that they really liked. Basically, the same thing we've already talked about. The graphics, the music, the gameplay, that kind of stuff. So, I think that movie tie-in games are no longer done, changing expectations of gamers, whatever, is a big reason why modern reviews of this game have been much more harsh. So, and Joe and I definitely like both agree. Overall, the fact that this game is really bashed more unfairly by modern gamers than it really should be, because. Yeah. Because why it's not great, it's not terrible either. There definitely are worse games on the system. Not everybody look at this game like not everybody looking at this game through modern eyes has hated it, like you said before, Joe. Like one person said this game was pretty good, but was pretty good by 1993 licensed time standards. Which sounds damning at first glance, but it's also like, yeah, it's like, standards for the licensed time standards. Again, they were not great. We knew back then as kids that most licensed tie games were not good games. Right. So it's like, as Wizard of Oz put in that group of games is actually like at least average, if not like good. So, so I do agree with that. There are a couple of nitpicks that modern games have with this game. I feel like I agree with. Outside of the poor collision hit detection, we've already talked about. Everybody in the game except for Tin Man has pretty weak character attacks, which again I think is a problem. I agree with that. It's like also speak about Tin Man. Why can't he jump? It's a platformer game. Why can't he jump? He should be able to jump at least something.
He's made of tin. He's heavy.
Yeah, I guess, but at least give him at least something of a jump. It's like I don't care if it's crappy. Just give him something for a jump. So, they also complain about. And this is something that this is something I meant to mention also about, like also Joe. Enemy design in this game. They do take some enemies from the movies. Like in the cartoons, such as like the crows. But obviously they had to create a lot of create a lot of enemies in this game to fill it out, such as like the teeth. And like a lot of modern gamers complain about that, and I'm like, okay, I kind of half agree with that. I wish they had used more enemies from the movie or the cartoon, but again, it's like, but at the same time, also like there's got to be a very limited pool of enemies from that source period to draw upon. So they had to create stuff, and I thought overall the create enemies in this game worked pretty well.
Yeah, and at least they didn't go like outside the box and were like, oh, the Munchkins and the Wizard of Oz are now enemies because we need enemies. You know what I mean? Like, at least you had the little, like, the guard sprites.
Yeah,
you know
the
what
Munchkins
I mean?
didn't get carried over. Right, exactly. The Munchkins didn't get treated very well by this game either, unfortunately. So there's also that. But yeah, so it's like, I thought the enemies of this game were fine. I like, I wish there were more of them. Right. But I thought it was fine. So again, I guess the final point I can make is that, as Joe kind of alluded to, I think this game would totally be forgotten about. These days if it wasn't for the odd tie license this game's based off of, because you're like Wizard of Oz game. What the hell flags up with that? Yeah. So that alone is giving the game some notoriety, and hence why people are focused upon the game as whipping boy for bad games unfairly. I think is because of that very weird tie-in. It wasn't that tie-in, and there's just a regular unlicensed platformer. This would be like totally forgotten about these days.
Yes, I agree.
But so you have that at least going forward. So that's interesting. So. Anyway, there are no cheat codes of this game for some reason. Platformers usually have at least one. This game doesn't have any at all. So, so if you want to skip ahead, use
the password.
Use passwords. eBay pricing is not that bad actually, all things considered. I think because the fact this game is pretty much largely forgotten about these days is what's keeping pricing this game like fairly low. So 20 copies of this game current list at the time of research. 30 copies of the game that's sold recently, so like you can't find it on there. Joe had mentioned before he thought $15 like the cart was a pretty fair price. Starting prices starting prices for the game for the cart only, and these prices do include shipping. They do start right about there. They start about $16. Yeah. So $16 to $56 is how much the game is sold for in cart form. CIB pricing is not that super standards is not that bad either. Anywhere from $60 to $190, depending upon like condition and whatnot. So yeah, $16 for the game. Like your collector, like it's a fair price. So. But anyway, yeah, really interesting game to look at least like for nothing else because it's very because nothing else, this game is very interesting in some ways, both good and bad. So it definitely is not your run-of-the-mill platformer. At least it's got at least it's got that like going forward. Going for it. So I don't regret playing it. I think it was I think Joe and I were both definitely. We're both definitely of the opinion that this is like an okay game. There definitely are better games. There definitely better platformers that are available in the system. But it's also not the worst game on there. And definitely not deserving like of all the criticism that the modern gamers and reviewers seem to want to give it for some reason or another.
Yeah, and before we completely wrap up, I just want to make a notable mention here. So they once again tried this in the early 2000s, and they made The Wizard of Oz Beyond the Yellow Brick Road for the Nintendo DS. It was published by Xseed, which has a spotty track record at best. Some of their stuff's really good, some of it's not. But this is legit a Wizard of Oz RPG. So the bottom screen is like a emerald ball that you can use to move your character around, which is on the top screen, and you literally battle turn-based when you run into enemies and stuff like that. And this was my first experience with a quote-unquote Wizard of Oz game.
I never heard that game.
And it is really good. It does kind of stray from the movies and
of course
other properties, but that's because as the title says, it is beyond the Yellow Brick Road. So this is supposed to be like a pseudo sequel from the Wizard of Oz. But if you can find that emulation wise, I would definitely suggest checking that out. I do know that game because it's Xseed and it's an RPG for the Nintendo DS. I know loose copies, last time I looked, were going for like $50-$60, which is crazy. And if you have a complete copy of that game, it's like almost $300. So it's definitely one you are going to emulate, because I don't recommend you spending $100 or even $50 for the DS game. But it is actually a really good RPG, and I wish I'd put more time into it. But I put a good 11 hours into it, and I don't even think I saw half of the game. So it's definitely one, if you're into RPGs and somewhat modern gaming, it's definitely one to check out for sure.
Yeah, again, the DS, like Super NES, has a huge library.
Yeah.
It's not surprising a few good games that fall in between the cracks. So, especially with RPGs, there are also like RPGs that have the system too. So, as a matter of fact, they just recently re-released Advance Wars 1 and 2 on the Switch because those were originally Actually, I think those games like GBA games originally. But anyway, from that,
I was gonna say, I think one was GBA, 2 was Nintendo DS. But either way, that's actually a collection I'm looking forward to digging into at some point. But Final Fantasy's life right now.
Right. So, anyway, so interesting game. Definitely fun to talk about, for sure, because it definitely is one of the more unique games on the system, like both good and bad reasons. So, next up on the podcast, we are starting to starting several action games, as opposed to what we had been doing so recently. I know this is Joe's pick, because I never actually played the Super NES version like this game. We're going to be covering Jungle Strike on the system next. I imagine, Joe, most of your history of this game, like the Genesis version, correct?
So, my experience with this game is it was a rental for the Genesis. Like I played it a little bit, and I saw that there was a Super Nintendo version, which I expected. And I was like, there's so many games we have to cover on this podcast that I was just like, you know what? Like, Jungle Strike is one of those that we should just cover and just dive right into it. So that's where we're going next episode.
Yep. So, fair warning, we're doing like a number of action games coming up with a platformer also thrown in there for good measure, because of course. Yeah. But because like I said, there are a ton of platformers on the system. So I think Joe and I are becoming experts at this point. But basically, what makes a good Super NES platformer, what doesn't. So, but anyway, as always, we appreciate you turning into us. Any questions, comments, feedback, etc., feel free to leave them on our Facebook page, or you also can email me directly at the SNES Podcast at yahoo.com. Joe, where can I reach you at?
You can pretty much find me anywhere. I'm Googleable. I have very public Facebook. Twitter's at JOESUX30. I got a YouTube channel. You could find me anywhere. Just use your Google machine and either Joe Copel or Radical Retro Roundup. You'll find pretty much everything you need.
Okay. Yep, sounds good. So as always, I appreciate you giving us a few minutes a day listening to this podcast. Everybody be safe, stay well. We'll catch you again next time. Later.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.